We often get calls from people who are thinking about buying real estate in Miami, but they're just not ready to make the commitment of living here full time. And so inevitably, the question comes up about renting the property when they're not here. And is it possible? Today I'm going to talk to you about what you need to know about buying a property in order to rent it out. Maybe you want to rent it out part of the year or all the time until you can make a full move here. But there are definitely some mistakes that people make when they're buying properties to rent. So today I'm going to talk to you about what you need to know about buying a property that you may want to rent out from time to time. And I'm going to get started now. Hey everyone, my name is Jamey Prezzi. I'm a real estate agent in Miami-Dade and Broward counties. I work with my husband Ognjen Prezzi and our team. Today I'm going to talk to you about how do you avoid some common mistakes that people make when buying a property in order to rent it out. But first, before I get started, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another update. We do put out new videos every week. Also use the link in our information box and download our free relocation guide. There's also a link to schedule via Calendly a Zoom call with us. So if you would like to use that, you're welcome to, or you can use the good old-fashioned way of calling, texting, or yes, now email is, I guess, old-fashioned. Email me too. Okay, let's get started. The most important thing that you need to know when it comes to buying a condo that you're planning to rent out is, does the association even allow you to rent out that unit? Because here, the associations, they are the ones who create the rules and regulations that go around what you can do with that unit at the end of the day. And you have to be very careful and read the rules and verify and double, triple check those rules to make sure that you can do what you want to do with that unit. Some buildings don't even allow you to rent the first year. Some buildings you have to only rent once a year, sometimes 3 times a year, sometimes once a year at a certain amount of times. Every building has their own rules and regulations, so you need to know what you're buying into so you can use it and rent it as you want. Next, you also have to make sure, in addition to the building's rules and regulations, that the area where you're buying allows renting in the way that you want to rent that property. For instance, Miami Beach has very strict rules and regulations when it comes to short-term rentals. And in our area, anything that is 181 days or less is considered a short-term rental, which essentially is 6 months plus 1 day or less. So even if your building allows you to do short-term rentals, if the property is in an area of the city that is not zoned for short-term rentals, you're not really supposed to be doing short-term rentals. So just know that you have to be very careful about where you're buying. Some of these old rules and regulations may just be super dated in these old buildings, and maybe there's a new rule that's been passed in that part of the city where you just cannot do short-term renting anymore. So if you're buying a property to do short-term rentals, you need to be very careful and make sure you understand what you're buying. If you want to buy a property that you're going to rent short-term, obviously we can help you with that. But the actual process of managing the actual short-term rental from turnover to turnover, sort of the Airbnb style, is a very specific way in which the rental needs to be handled. There are special taxes and rules and licensing that are in place for that, and you need to know what you're doing so you make sure you're doing it right and you don't get a big fine from the city. Another animal, but something that we can talk about during a buyer consultation. If you're doing just a regular rental, 181 days, that's very common in our area. You just have to make sure the building allows it. From there, you really need to understand the market conditions for the type of property that you are planning to rent. One thing that I always tell people is that if they are planning to buy a property in which they're going to rent out, I would highly discourage buying a property that's very old and one that requires a lot of ongoing maintenance and repairs. Because if you're not here, the last thing you want to be doing is hunting down contractors to do a lot of repairs on a property that's rented. Renters do expect properties to be in very specific conditions as promised on their lease, and so you need to make sure that you're complying with those conditions. In Florida, we have a Landlord-Tenant Act that governs how landlords and tenants have to work with each other, or rather treat each other. And so I think it's very important that you read over that so that you know what you're getting into. Try to buy a property in the best condition as possible so that you don't deal with a lot of hassles of a lot of repairs when you decide to lease the property. What you can do is have obviously a home inspection when you are under contract to purchase the property, and then maybe go ahead and look into updating some of those items that are a little bit outdated so that you don't have to deal with it when you go to rent it. So again, another long story that we can cover during a buyer consultation, but if you can, try to make your money go a long way and buy the best unit for the best price and in the best condition possible so that you can go ahead and get the property rented as soon as possible and not deal with a lot of repairs, because that is a nightmare. You don't want to have to deal with that, especially if you're trying to rent a property. One really good thing to know is in our area, the realtors, we do a lot of rentals. For example, I handle a lot of rentals for our clients who've purchased real estate over the years, and it is a very sort of natural process within our local business. We do have leases that we're able to assist you with. We can help the tenants with their application process, with the condo association. We can also help you gather information to make good decisions about the tenants. In Miami, there is a very common practice to assist our buyers after they close with the rental process. We all do it every day. It's a very natural part of the rental process in our city. One thing that I think is really important is to make sure that you have a look over the comps in that building so that you can assess what people are actually charging for rent, and not just assume that just because they're charging that or your friend told you that that's what they're charging, that's what they're charging. It's important to look at the comps just as you would if you were buying a property to actually close on it, to have a look over the rental comps so you can make sure that that monthly rent covers everything that you expect it to cover so that you're not left upside down every single month. One really good thing about buying real estate in our area is a lot of the units are already rented. So there's a very good chance that you can buy a property that already has a tenant in place if you don't want to have to deal with that hassle at the beginning. So always ask us if that's something that's interesting for you, and we can go ahead and try and find a property where a tenant is in place. The rental market in our area is very strong. I think the most important thing to know before buying any property that you need to rent out is just to make sure that you're able to do it in the way in which you intend to use that after you close. Double check, triple check, read all the rules and regulations. It really is a big issue with the short-term rentals. That's where you have to be super, super careful and picky and know what you're buying. But if you're buying a property where you plan to lease it for more than like a short-term rental period, it's fairly straightforward and an easy thing to do in our area. If you have more questions about buying a property and then renting it out, know that we're always here to be a resource for you. We help our buyers with these types of projects all the time. You just have to know what you're doing, run the comps, and make sure you know exactly what you're buying. My name is Jamey Prezzi. This is my husband, Ognjen Prezzi. You can find us online on Instagram at the Prezzis, and we'll see you soon.